to BuruBuru by Venom, winner of MQE's first ever prompt contest. This is a short story written about a mostly blind protagonist who attempts to save a girl from a fear demon. For more information on MQE, stay until the end of the video or look in the information box below. Samael could not see. It was not an impairment people traditionally associated the albino with. Samael had always been blind, but people were more inclined to focus on pigmentation, or lack thereof, of his skin. Other spirit hunters avoided him for that reason, fearing him to be some sort of soulless vampire that masqueraded as a human, apparently very poorly. Sometimes he was avoided because of his dragging companion, but that was not the case today. "Yokai!" shouted the mother, unaware of the irony of such a claim. Mamoru's fingers curled into the space between Samael's shoulder and the base of his neck. It was a preemptive warning not to fly off the handle. Samael was amused, not upset.
If only dragons had empathy like Nephilim do,
he thought, tracing the aura of the woman in front of him. He could not see her, but he could see the desaturated halo of light like watercolor on a black canvas. There was only her, but Samael could hear the sniffles and the uncontained sobs of the small child that the mother was clinging to. There was no aura for those marked for death. Samael had no sympathy for either the child or the demon who lingered behind her. He was here because the mother had asked for help, and if she needed to be reminded of such, he had no problem informing her. In English, though, not in Japanese.
if you think I'm the demon, by all means, we'll leave. Your daughter will be dead by midnight, and it'll be on your conscience, not mine.
Mamoru's grip tightened. Samael turned his head until a broader aura lit up the pitch black, a soft shade of indigo. The warmth of the dragon's hand trailed down Samael's arm and lovingly laced the albino's fingers with his own.
You don't understand.
Mamoru sighed.
And he does not want to educate you.
That was surprisingly harsher than usual. Mamoru was usually against him in moments like these, as if Samael was brushing his shark-like scales the wrong way. Sam would trace them sometimes, but now was not the time to be thinking about that.
I am, ironically enough, the only person you'll find who can deal with this.
Samael stroked Mamoru's fingers beneath the knuckles, where silver scales culminated.
Unless you can find a hunter with angel feathers on hand, Nephilim are the next best thing.
Nephilim? The girl whispered. Samael felt the smirk curl his lips upward. The child's voice was trembling, but the fact that she even spoke made her braver than her mother. Samael did not consider himself terrifying by any means, but his presence alone tended to make people feel inferior. Mamoru had described him as
grotesque.
Once.
But in the most breathtaking kind of way.
People couldn't help but want to stare, children especially. He could feel her eyes on him, steady despite the shivers that racked her. No amount of warmth would cure that disease, although he was sure that the mother was clinging to her child in some desperate attempt to soothe her.
Traditionally, the cleansing of demons requires the feather of an angel attached to the sage stick Mamoru is about to burn.
Samael very rarely took time to explain any of the rituals he or his partners participated in. He hadn't the desire to answer questions, especially from those dumb enough to need spiritual cleansing in the first place. For a child, though, he could make an exception. If her mother hadn't wanted to teach her the arts of protecting herself against spirits, it was not the fault of the child for falling victim.
Following the cleansing, Mamoru will perform the lesser banishing ritual of the pentagram.
"Yokai!" the mother repeated. "Coming into my home, speaking of witchcraft!" Samael inhaled.
I don't reject your gods, although you rejected the ones of your people. Perhaps that's why this demon has decided to...
Mamoru's hands lifted from Sam's shoulder, stopping the Nephilim's train of thought. Sam wished in that moment that he could see something more than the darkness of his vision, something beyond soft, fuzzy shapes and colors. Pastel Indigo stepped in front of him and shaded the gray-painted hue of yellow.
Ah,
Samael thought.
She was going to hit me.
He could not find the daughter's form, but her trembling hand slipped over his just for a moment. Samael wrenched the hand away and gasped in shock before he reminded himself that he was fine. Please help me, the daughter begged. Samael reached his hand out to find hers once again. When she touched them, he tapped the back of her hand and trailed his fingers up to her shoulders. A cold chill passed through his fingertips as they brushed over the demon's grip on this child.
Mamoru, are you done? Done. Nani?
Mamoru clicked his tongue.
Child, she's struggling.
He could hear the mother groaning and fighting against his dragon companion now that he focused on it, but she wasn't going to have any luck. Dragon skin was impenetrable by human standards. Samael chose to ignore being called child to save time. He'd certainly kick up a fuss about it later.
Knock her out, then. We're wasting time with a feared demon, and we've scared the girl enough. She could die of her own fright at this rate. Sam, seriously?
Mamoru grumbled. Samael squeezed the shoulders of the child and lifted his fingers upwards, tracing the line of her neck and up to her jaw to curl around her ears. Strands of coarse hair resisted the movement, but he brushed it aside to get a better feel of her face. She shook so violently that Sam felt a chill crawl up his spine, but he rolled his shoulders to avoid doing so.
So, why can't you knock her out?
Samael pressed.
I'm not going to violently assault some woman because she fears for her daughter.
He was lucky to be able to say that. The average person would have no choice but to injure her, to save themselves from her wrath. She would have gladly harmed him, for example. Samael would cross the room and slam her head against the wall, all in the name of self-defense. But if she broke free of Mamoru's grip, he'd be in danger then. It would be more fun then. Over, but fun.
Where's your sage?
Samael asked.
My bag slung against the chair you were sitting in. Second zipper pocket to the right. Perhaps try being more descriptive for the blind dragon?
Mamoru cursed under his breath.
The chair is just behind you. If you reach for it, you'll find it.
Samael stepped away from the girl and shifted to feel for the chair behind him. His fingers caught the smooth surface of the wooden back, so he curled around to locate the rougher fabric of the bag strap.
Lower, angel.
There was a time and a place for names like that. Then again, he just referred to Mamoru as Dragon without a thought, so he really had no leg to stand on if he wanted to complain. Am I going to die? The child asked. Samael could hear Mamoru and the mother conversing, but Japanese was a language he only knew at a very basic level. Exposure to the language came almost entirely from Mamoru's occasional slips into his native tongue, or overheard phone calls from the rest of the dragon family, spoken in Japanese. There was no use attempting to decipher, so he clutched the bag and slung it over his shoulder.
If you want my honest opinion, Sam...
Mamoru interjected. Samael took a steadying breath and tried again.
I don't perform this ritual. He does. He's more knowledgeable on the subject of banishing and far more knowledgeable on demons of Japanese origin. Since he won't put your mother to rest for a few hours, I can't tell you how it'll go.
The girl broke into a sob and hugged his waist.
Just grab the fucking sage, Sam.
Mamoru's instructions were honestly poor. He did find what he was looking for, but it took a few tries and a number of attempts through a cluttered bag to do so.
And a lighter? I'm a dragon.
Samael scoffed.
Congratulations! You breathe fire! Where's your lighter? I don't have one.
Mamoru spoke softly, likely aware that he was proving Sam's point by admitting that he didn't, in fact, have the resources to allow his Nephilim companion to do the ritual himself. That could have, and probably should have, started an argument, but there was no time for that. The girl was trembling against him, and was not going to stop until either she was dead or free of her demons. Demon, in this case. This child was lucky to be inflicted with only one negative spirit, given her mother's ignorant opinions.
BuruBuru are relatively simple spirits to cleanse.
Sam explained.
They aren't very powerful, which is why they tend to attach themselves to children.
The mother whispered a hymn that Samael recognized as Christian in faith. He had nailed her then, on abandoning Shinto. It was easy to make that assumption. Western worshippers thought him some sort of demon, and Eastern usually had no idea what the bad feeling in the pit of their gut was trying to tell them. The son of a falling angel was unholy for Judeo-Christian faiths. They knew that they were looking at an abomination and reacted accordingly.
So, how do you expect me to do this then?
Samael asked.
Just come over here. I'll light it. I can recite the ritual and you can do the rest.
Samael peeled the child's fingers from his waist and scanned the room for the familiar hue of indigo. Mamoru's aura was familiar, but there was something off about it now. His spirit seemed restless.
Are you sure about this? Of course,
Mamoru said. The girl took hold of his wrist and led him across the room. Samael stepped gingerly, unwilling to put his faith in the child's ability to lead the blind.
How does a Western banishment ritual work on yokai anyway?
Sam asked.
Spirits are manifestations of the same ilk. The rhythm and intent are what matters, and I make modifications.
Samael probably would have known that if he had paid more attention to the words when Mamoru spoke them. He was often too enamored by the spark of an aura fighting against the darkness to reclaim its life.
Whatever you say,
Samael murmured.
You're the boss.
Mamoru's fire was not literally invoked by breathing it. He instead treated his middle finger and his thumb like flint and steel to create a spark that lit his index finger. Samael was more than familiar with the motion because it had been described to him in detail by more than just Mamoru. The sage lit and filled the room with a gentle, earthy smell. Samael waved it around before he stepped away from the purple and yellow auras.
Can you do me a favor?
Sam asked the girl.
Can you show me where your shoulders are?
The girl grabbed his right wrist and led it to her shoulder blade. Samael smiled to reassure her. The mother shrieked from behind him and broke the concentration that he'd only just started to have. Mamoru let out a pitched noise of shock. Mama! The girl gasped. Samael had no reference to where he was in the room, but he had some semblance of orientation via the chair. Damp, sweaty fingers curled around his neck and knocked him nearly directly into it. The force was enough to bruise his back. The force of the choking sound would definitely bruise his neck. They both hit the ground in a scramble. Witchcraft the left hand! I understand now! You will not have my daughter, demon! The daughter broke into terrified sobs somewhere around him. His point of reference had been taken from him, and the desaturated yellow was bordering by a distracting ring of violet red. The mother shrieked a second time as her hands were lifted from him. Samael coughed and brought his hand to his neck as the woman's scream strengthened. The daughter, too, started to scream. As the dragon's possessiveness was nigh unrivaled by, and the woman had touched something that Mamoru considered his with vicious intent. Samael was familiar with the sound of a skull crack. Mamoru had given this woman every courtesy, and he would not feel guilty in delivering a painful death. A wisp of smoke rose from the corner of Samael's vision. The demon had taken the girl's soul, and they were left with 2 corpses and the acknowledgement of failure. Samael did not ask what happened, although he knew that Mamoru would tell him. The dragon would give him every detail of what the mother looked like, where her skull had split, how many times he had pressed his boot against her temple. He held out his hand and waited for Mamoru to help him up instead.
Sorry,
Mamoru mumbled. He pulled Sam to his feet and traced his fingers over a number of places on his body, likely to inspect blood splatter.
I was trying to talk her down, but she was beyond reason.
Samael shrugged.
You wanted to try. We tried. There's a reason we avoid people, you know. I know, but we were her only hope.
Dying of fright was, at least, a more peaceful end. A heart attack was far kinder than what Mamoru had done to the girl's mother.
This is why we don't offer cleansing services. Children shouldn't be an exception.
Mamoru took the messenger bag from Samael's shoulder and sighed.
You're the boss,
he said.
Damned right I am. Now search the house. If we came all this way, we're leaving with something. Dead women don't pay bills.
Mamoru rummaged through the bag and placed a glass jar in Samael's hands. Black salt would protect him from harmful spirits, and with both the yokai and the potentially vengeful spirit of the mother around, he'd need a full-fledged circle.
I'll light the sage again,
Mamoru offered.
We'll clear their spirits and then conceal the place.
The chair was moved, probably back to its feet after the altercation. Samael waited patiently for Mamoru to lead him back to it, and allowed the dragon to run his hands across his face and hover over his neck.
You're so strange,
Sam said.
So adamant to preserve her comfort, right up until you killed her in cold blood. I'll never understand you.
Mamoru tapped his cheekbone and pulled away.
I've explained it many a time. All bets are off when they disrespect my things. I am a generous man, not a patient one.
Samael added "my things" to the list of arguments he was going to have with Mamoru when they were done. For now, though, he circled the chair with black salt and tucked his knees into his chest. Thank you all for listening to BuruBuru by Venom. If you have enjoyed the story, support Venom and MQE by tapping the like button. If you are interested in future stories, please subscribe and adjust the bell to be notified about our next upload. MQE stands for Muses, Quills, and Editors, a safe and supportive creative community. For more information, MQE can be reached via Discord link or our website, both noted in the info box below. Thank you again, and have a marvelous day.